I would like invite Behram Sroush, our next speaker. Behram is a UK-based civil rights activist and coordinator of international campaign to boycott Islamic regime of Iran. Welcome, Behram.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And thank you to Freedom Now and the organizers of this event for giving me this opportunity today to say a few words about the important international aspect of the fight against the Islamic regime of Iran and in support of Iranian workers. I'm speaking here today on behalf of the campaign for the boycott of the Islamic regime of Iran and how the work for the political isolation of the Islamic regime and its expulsion from international bodies such as the ILO, the International Labour Organization, is an important act of solidarity with the workers in Iran. The May Day of every year provides the opportunity for workers everywhere to reflect on their condition, on the fight that they are waging, and about what needs to be done to further that fight, the steps that need to be taken to forge greater solidarity among the various sections of the working class in the fight for a better world, a world free of capitalist exploitation with greater force and with greater clarity. Iran and the Iranian working class is, of course, no exception. And as we have already heard from the previous speakers and the powerful statement and messages that were read out, the current Iranian society is simmering with daily struggles by workers across all sectors and industries, from the sugarcane workers of Haftepe to the retired workers, from the oil workers to steel workers, to teachers, to nurses, and so on. An important point to note, and this is related to my message and call here today, is that these struggles are not just against single employers, but against the state, the Islamic regime as a whole. The Islamic regime in Iran denies the slightest right to protest, so the fight for the slightest improvement in workers' conditions comes up against a barrier of the state. And in this sense, it becomes an integral part of the general nationwide fight against the Islamic regime and for its overthrow. This is also the case in the other social justice struggles, such as against discrimination and violence against women, for freedom of expression, for the release of political prisoners, for the right of the child, for freedom of religion and not having a religion, and for many other demands. All of these come up against the barrier of the state. This fight for the workers in Iran in support of their demands and for the overthrow of the regime has an important international significance. The Islamic regime in Iran is not just a menace for the people in Iran, but a reactionary force against basic freedoms in the whole of the Middle East, in Iraq, in the Lebanon, in Syria, etc., and in the entire world. Getting rid of this regime as an important pillar of the reactionary and savage political Islamic movement will be an important step forward for workers' rights, for women's rights, and for civil rights, not only in Iran, but in the whole of the Middle East and globally. My message, therefore, today, on the eve of May Day to the people of the world, is to support the people of Iran in this common fight by echoing their call that this regime is not their representative, but their killer. It is a regime that jails and flogs worker activists and women's rights activists, tortures and executes political prisoners, and dumps their bodies in unmarked mass graves, shoots and kills peaceful demonstrators, like the 1,500 protesters who were shot dead during the November 2019 protests against the petrol price rise. It is a regime that throws acid in the face of women defying the laws on compulsory hijab, the Islamic headdress. A regime that executes people for being gay, that executes people for renouncing Islam, changing their assigned religion, or for being an atheist. A regime that deliberately shoots down a passenger plane, killing all 176 innocent people on board, just to find a way to resolve its crisis in the midst of a political and military conflict. This is a regime that has perpetrated numerous horrific crimes against humanity for over 4 decades. That is why the people of Iran are demanding that this regime be isolated and boycotted internationally, just as the regime of apartheid once was. Specifically, our campaign is calling for the representatives of this regime to be thrown out of UN bodies such as the ILO. A regime that arrests, jails, and flogs workers has no place in an international labor body. Also, this regime should be thrown out of international women's rights bodies, such as the UN Commission on the Status of Women. It is astonishing that a regime that is the worst abuser of women's rights in the world, a regime that has been perpetrating organized state violence and misogyny against women in Iran for over 4 decades, should have been appointed to a UN women's rights body charged with promoting women's equality. With your help, and I'm speaking to the people of the world, to the working class, the world working class, we may be celebrating next year's May Day freely in the main Freedom Square in the Iranian capital, Tehran, following the fall of this regime and the victory of the workers and people of Iran. I wish everyone a happy May Day and victory in our common struggle for a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Behram Sorosh, coordinator of the campaign to boycott Islamic regime in international organizations.